All right. Look at you, Matthew Fairburn, sitting here on a Thursday evening, March 19th, 2026, the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show doing a live one tonight. I'm your host, Chris Baker. You can find me on X at Sabres Prospects. And I'm here with Matthew Fairburn. He is your Sabres beat writer for The Athletic. You can find everything that Matthew does over at theathletic.com/Sabres. The NHL's version of March Madness continues tonight with an 11-game slate. That includes the Sabres heading into San Jose, minus 148, the Sabres are, Matthew Fairburn, on the money line. If you're watching this show on YouTube, like this video, subscribe to the Sabres Prospects YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so you know when a new episode is live, like tonight, or ready to go if it's one of our morning shows that I would rather be doing. I said I wasn't going to complain about it, but I am. I'm going to complain about being here at 8:20.
We had somebody in the chat asking, when are we going to get a live show at 5 a.m.? So they're looking for the best of both worlds.
Well, here we are. So subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, hit the like button several times, but make sure whatever you don't, I think hit it an odd number of times. So it's the thumb stays up on the video. And you can find the Baker Fairburn Hockey Show on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And you could please leave a 5-star review. You can shit all over me in the comments. It's always appreciated. Good-natured ribbing. Good-natured ribbing. That's what it's all about, people. Okay? I'd like to see your sense of humor in your reviews on Apple. All right, Matthew Fairburn. Sabres coming into tonight. And no, we're not reading the chat, Matt. Put that away. We're not reading the chat. Sorry, Cantor. We're not reading the chat. Told you I'm ornery. Hi, Cantor. Thanks for being here tonight, by the way. Sabres going to San Jose tonight, coming off a 2-0 victory in Vegas. We talked about it on the last show that we did. Sabres have had some recent success in the state of California over the past couple of seasons. And we'll see what the team has in store tonight. A little bit of a different lineup tonight. UPL will get the break as expected. The rotation is alive and well in net for the Sabres right now. He had a shutout the other night. What was it 27 saves? I believe it was. UPL had somewhere in that neighborhood.
Might have got bumped up to 28 overnight with the stat corrections, but it was at 27 at the buzzer. So
a shutout, first shutout, 8th of his career, I believe it is for UPL. Looks like we'll see Alex Lyon tonight, but the team played without the other Alex in Vegas on Tuesday, and it looks like Alex Tuck coming back into the lineup for the Sabres tonight. I think we want to keep talking about the defense, though. I won't let it go. We started the year talking about this 3 goalie rotation that the Sabres had that ultimately saved their ass, if you think about it this season, in many ways. It's not the key. We should probably get into that because that whole debate about what sparked the Sabres. Was it the GM change? Was it something else? We could probably talk about that because that conversation is not going to die. But the goaltending did save their ass. We talked a lot about it at the beginning of the year. And now the new conversation, I think, is going to be the Sabres' third defensive pair. And kind of this revolving door, I think we're going to see with a couple bodies there, with that whole logjam that they have post-trade deadline with 9 defensemen when they're fully healthy. So we saw Metza and Logan Stanley as a pair against Vegas, and it seems like that may be what we see again tonight. Is that your read on the situation? I'm going to pass the puck over to you, Matthew Fairburn, for you to talk while I sip my coffee here. Because, I'm drinking a coffee. So
that's right.
About this.
Coffee after 8 p.m. is risky business, but, you've always been a late night coffee guy, not me. I am obviously not in San Jose, as anybody watching this can attest, as they see me in my usual perch here. But according to Sabres.com, they've got, looks like Jordan LaBarber is out there on site. And looks like the same lineup with Tuck inserted for Tyson Kozak. So that third pair that worked pretty well, I think, against Vegas gets another crack at it with Logan Stanley and Zach Metza. This feels to me like a case of Lindy Ruff just sticking by his word, right? Zach Metza earning the spot, and they don't want to take it away from him until he does something that forces their hand a little bit. I thought that pair was better than the Stanley Shen pair was, and I think it settled Stanley down a bit for sure. They didn't do anything spectacular, but that's not the job of a third defensive pair. So they were, you know, when you get to the point of, when you reach the playoffs, you might be looking at some, you want to have gotten a look at all these guys together, right? You want to have looked at as many combinations as possible so that when you're forced into different situations because of injuries or maybe there's a matchup, that you at least have all of the information. And so far, we have Stanley Kesselring, okay, not bad. Stanley Shen, not so great. And Stanley Metza, first game looked all right. I thought they played pretty well. Metza continues to do all the things that have gotten him to this point. When you're that size, you don't get to the NHL like you don't get a free pass, right? I think the saying is if you're Mets' size, right? If you're 5'9", you have to play your way into the NHL, and if you're 6'5", you've got to play your way out of the NHL. And so he has done everything that they've needed him to do. He makes quick decisions with the puck. He's really smart. He's a good skater. He reads the game well.
Mhm.
He thinks the game incredibly quickly, and that's how the Sabres play. So we'll see if he can keep it up. That's what it comes down to, because I don't think they're going to take him out just to take him out anymore. But Connor Timmins is getting close. He's getting close. This is like a week, coming up on a week since he started practicing, and I think Lindy Ruff put it into that 1 to 2 week range. From when he starts practicing is when he'll probably be available to go into a game, and that was a guy that was giving them tons of minutes, a lot of PK time
A lot of
earlier in the year.
PK. Yeah.
So you have to think they're going to want to get him going a little bit too.
Let's get into the head of Michael Kesselring throughout all of this. And certainly probably some frustration based on how his season has gone. And I think that frustration is likely only just inflamed. What's the word I'm looking for? Exacerbated. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. But I mean, now with the extra bodies here, he's battled injuries, and I'm sure he just wants to play and keep going and proving his value to his teammates and keep justifying his inclusion in that trade, which many thought he was the headline piece in that trade for Peterka. Let's get into Kesselring's head here for a second. Do you think this is a situation where, obviously, look, he wants the team to keep winning, but do you think this is a Lindy thing where maybe when the team loses, he tweaks it, like keeps riding the same lineup, like Marty Wilford doesn't change his suit? Do we think it's one of these deals? And what does Kesselring have to do, I guess, to get back in?
It does
Tough
look
question, right? Yeah.
It does look like one of those things, and Lindy Ruff has the tendency to do that. I feel like you look at when they were on that first winning streak, it took a while before. In fact, it might have been the entirety of it that Jason Zucker didn't play, right? It was like keep the same lineup going, and I think he got in at some point. Maybe somebody got hurt, but he was healthy enough to go. He was ready to go, and that was a spot where at some point, you probably could have thrown him in, right? You probably could have the winning streak and everything could have been put aside to put your best lineup on the ice.
Mm-hmm.
This is a little bit different because I think the thought is that Metza continues to warrant the ice time. He continues to earn it. And Kesselring has to wait around for his next opportunity to earn it, to do the same thing. And I think the byproduct here is that he probably does get some. It's hard to say exactly where he's at physically because between the knee and the ankle, it just feels like he'll need an off season to reset the body completely and get it back where it should be. But he definitely isn't as bad off as he was earlier in the season or even like January before the
Mm-hmm.
break. Like he was really fighting it then. And I don't think he is now. I think he's moving a lot better and I think he's feeling a lot better and more sure of himself. But he still missed a lot of time and didn't get a great chance to get a rhythm. And I'll tell you what, like Metza, it's easy for it's easy to look like Kesselring is the more talented player, right? And I think when you get him going, I think he will be the better player. But the fact of the matter is that Zach Metza is a really like high end hockey IQ guy and a really like good passer, quick decision, like all those things I rattled off give him a really high floor. And so that when the mistakes aren't happening, it does become a little bit tough to take him out of the lineup unless you're just doing it because on the projection. Because from what we've seen of Kesselring, he hasn't. If you're going to make it a true competition, and I think you look at some of the things that have been said about Zach Metza, and you look around the room
Well, yes.
at Alex Lyon calling him the security blanket and raving about him, and the guys really like him. They like not just his.
Lindy saying that he's earned the right to play is huge. He makes the lineup decision.
Well, yeah, and his teammates.
Right.
You see a guy like that that's really scratched and clawed. Until he does something, they're probably going to keep him in. Now, the question I think would be probably a fair one for Kesselring would be, well, what about Logan Stanley?
Well, that's okay. Well, so thank you. That was my next question for you. All things considered, toughness, everything else, contingent. Kesselring has to be healthy for this question to be relevant. Who's better for the Sabres in a playoff day one of the playoffs? A healthy Michael Kesselring, who's been here all year, knows the system, hasn't been fully healthy, right? We don't know. It's hard to measure, but that's the question I think that the coaching staff needs to really consider. And Logan Stanley controls that while he's in the lineup. He controls what the answer is, I think.
I think the answer is Logan Stanley. And I think
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is.
I think it is because it's not in a vacuum, one for one. It's not, there's a domino effect. And if you have Kesselring and Metza, I go back to the fact that Kesselring and Metza don't operate as a pair, right? So if you put them in, you're going back to the 8 to 10 minutes a night because you're rotating them in with the top four.
Mhm.
Neither one of those guys can play on the left side, or at least they don't. They don't play together. And so it's not a question of, do you want this? I've seen some people throwing up polls like, what should the third pair be? And like Metza Kesselring's an option. It's not a pair. They don't
Well, it
play them
could
that way.
be. I mean,
It
yeah, but
could
it's not.
be,
Yeah, it's not
but
impossible.
but
So
now you're asking one of them to play their offhand. And if you're asking me one for one, who's the better player, like on a given shift, if you're saying you've
it's
got to
not the
throw,
question, though. Yeah, that's not the question.
if you got to throw somebody out there with, one of the top four, I think I'd rather throw Kesselring out there. Like I think he is the better player and the better fit for how the Sabres want to play. But if you're asking me who makes more lineup sense, I think it's Stanley because of the left shot. And if Metza's the other guy if you think about it, Metza could be the other guy they go with. Timmins to me looks like a strong contender to get into the playoff lineup because of the role he had earlier in the season.
Yeah.
So you
Tim
could
and
be looking
Stanley,
at
and then you're taking Mets out.
you could be looking at I think when you get to the playoffs, Zach Metz is not going to be in the lineup, personally. But I don't know. That's just a guess. And if the playoffs started tomorrow, you might play Metza. I don't know because again, he's earned it. But like I just think at some point in the next 14 games, something will happen to give somebody else a chance. And I think when you get to the playoffs, the style of game might expose the size issue. But there are small defensemen that succeed in the NHL. So it'll be interesting. I mean, he keeps playing like this, he'll be in that lineup. But, I would guess that some guys are going to get rotated back in because, there might be maintenance here and there for different guys. They're getting pretty close to the point where they can do that. They're, 9 points ahead of Columbus still. So as those other guys get opportunities, will that make the decision a little bit trickier for, playoff time, Metza versus Kesselring? I don't know, but we'll see. It'll be fascinating because I wouldn't have necessarily guessed that, when Metza got called up, he'd be in the lineup in March, let alone with all the additions that they have. But he has proven a lot of people wrong, including himself, I think. So he's a great story, and if he keeps it going like this into the playoffs, I think they'll almost have to play him.
If there's a, if the standings, you just mentioned Columbus. So I think part of that whole defense third pair thing, a factor is who are they playing? If the standings stay similar and Columbus keeps winning, Columbus is the team that I can't imagine the Sabres want to play. I think that's their worst option for a potential first round opponent. When you look at all those teams that are kind of hanging, whether it's the 2 wild card spots or, Columbus is obviously the clear front runner outside of the bubble to be in that group with Boston and Detroit right now, although that could change in a heartbeat. Montreal could fall down. We don't know. But, you look at those 4 teams, Montreal, Boston, Detroit, Columbus. I think Columbus is the one that they would want to play the least. And if you get Columbus, I think it's Kesselring, Stanley on that third pair. That's something to consider. Timmins would be hard. Timmins would be hard to jam in there. If you think about the heaviness of those forwards that Columbus has, some of the shit that happens after the whistle with those guys, I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. That's a team that I don't think that they'd want to play.
Columbus would be a pain in the ass matchup for sure. They've been a problem for the Sabres in recent seasons, and they play a style of game that is, they're a really good team, first of all. Like, they're playing incredibly well since probably around the new year, maybe even more recently. They're really, climbing the standings, and their underlyings have been better than, the record would suggest for a long stretch of the season. When I'm sizing up the potential opponents, that's one that looks like probably the biggest problem of the realistic ones in round one. You're looking at Montreal, Boston, Detroit. Like, those all look a little bit more doable to me, based on just seeing the matchups. And you saw Columbus end the Sabres 10-game winning streak earlier this season with that kind of game that, that, like you said, they're heavy on the forecheck. They're not afraid after the whistle, but they also have a lot of skill in their lineup, like a lot of high-end skill, including on the blue line, guys that can jump into the play and create some problems that way, and guys that can finish the scoring chances, right? That you can't make a lot of mistakes against that team. So that is a team that they're in a similar spot to the Sabres where they've been building for a while, and they've been accumulating a lot of this talent. And I think a lot of those guys are growing up, and they've got a few star level players, in their lineup. They've got some experience with guys like Boone Jenner. It's a pretty good mix, and not a building that's been kind to Buffalo over the years. Frankly, nothing against Columbus. Columbus is fine, but compared to like Montreal and Boston and stuff, I feel like for my purposes, it's pretty low on my list too. I'd rather go to Montreal.
I get that. I think for readership too, just the overall
business definitely for readership. Definitely for readership. Yeah. Montreal's a pretty strong market for us, so that would be a pretty good one.
Is that a factor for you when we talk about, how to slot these D come playoff time? And listen, I know there's 14 games left in the regular season, but got to start figuring this stuff out. You know what I mean? And maybe, if you're not going to have Metza in your playoff lineup, you don't think, then you got to start getting Kesselring back in there. I thought Kesselring should have played last game, but nothing against Metza. I don't know. Is it a factor for you? Who they draw in how you deploy?
It
You're
could be.
5-6?
It could be. But
Or do you just say I'm the Buffalo Sabres? Let the teams match up to us. We're the Buffalo Sabres. Start
that's
acting like the big dog.
you do have to
Play
do a
your
little bit
best.
of that.
Yeah.
And I think thing about Metza that is intriguing is that, style of game, like Kesselring's probably heavier, right? Can better handle that just by virtue of his size. But Metza is a pretty stocky dude, right? So like he can hold up. He he's also 27. He's older
Mhm.
than Kesselring. Kesselring hasn't played in the playoffs. Zach Metza has not played in the playoffs, but he did win a national championship. Big game experience, different level of game, obviously, but
Kesselring is a Hockey East guy. Has to be hating that there's an ECAC guy in
yeah,
front of him not playing.
that's a good point. Yeah, that's so as far you almost want to give Metza the benefit of the doubt a little bit because of at that level he was the anchor for that Quinnipiac team. Like he was the guy that was holding things down for them, I feel like. And so the moment shouldn't be too big for him. It's just a matter of if the speed and the style of the game would be too much for him. And I guess there's going to be time over the next few weeks. Somebody's going to have a little something that they need a day off, like Samuelson had over the weekend, and gives you a chance to get a different guy in the lineup. What they probably need to do is not spend too many more games on the Luke Shen experiment.
Yeah, he can chill.
He got acclimated. He got, his feet wet a little bit. Figure out how the rest of these guys fit with Stanley. I think they've got a pretty good body of work of Stanley and Shen at this point, and now it's probably time to see how the other guys fit. And you're gonna need time to see how Timmins looks and feels coming back from that injury, because you need to know whether you can count on him in the postseason. So, what a problem to have, huh?
It is.
Who's your sixth defenseman, right? This is
Yeah.
this is what good teams wonder about in March. What were we talking about on March 19th last year, do you think?
I have no idea. Not this. Definitely not this.
I'm gonna look.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Go look while you're doing that. We are 23-ish minutes into the show. If you're joining on YouTube, hit that like button. We're going to continue talking here for a little bit. We will read the chat, by the way. I was just being facetious. I wanted to get going. I didn't want to get derailed with the chat a minute into the show, despite what Matthew tried to do. But I'm sure Matthew will start some chats. So we'll get to that. We will close out tonight by looking at the chat and throwing some of the best ones up there and discussing them. Goaltending, we might as well talk a little bit about the goaltending here. Philosophically, the rotation's been working. Where does Matthew Fairburn land on come playoffs? Are you riding one, or are you going into a rotation also in the playoffs and keeping your guys fresh and rotating? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. The real goaltending question is, what are they going to do in the offseason? We should get to that. We got a lot of time. That's a better one, but
it's a better question because the answer to the first one depends on how the two are playing come playoff time. My gut tells me you keep rotating, because I believe that part of what has brought these guys success is the predictability of the rotation and the fact that they've been able to stay fresh. Because when the goaltending slipped a little bit early in the season, it was when Lyon was overworked and he ended up getting hurt at some point. Luukkonen, was nursing the injury. And so, keeping him fresh was important. Mentally, physically, they're both in a much better place, rotating back and forth the way that they have. And you either need to continue doing that, or you need one guy to really step up and say, like, this is my net. And I don't know that we've totally seen that, because they've both played so well. They've both played incredibly well. Luukkonen played a fantastic game the other night, and I think has been really great. I mean, since the Olympic break and maybe even a little bit before that. The Tampa game was what it was. I don't think didn't have a ton to do with Luukkonen, really.
Mhm.
But Lion's been terrific as well. So I don't know. There's nights where you watch Luukkonen and you think this guy has to be in the net game one. But I think you have those same thoughts with Lion, you know?
I've been a Luukkonen guy. I don't get that feeling that he has to be the guy, in that on game one. I keep waiting for the goaltending to come back down to earth. You keep waiting for it. Just, you know what I mean? Like, is it sustainable? Like the team's PDO results. Is it sustainable? You keep waiting for that. And I always think it's going to be the goaltending one that comes back down first, but it hasn't. It hasn't. But there is a lot of hockey left to play, but I'm only having these playoff conversations now because every model that you look at, they're like 99%. I don't know what Dom's model is. I'm sure it's 99%. Money Puck, 99.7%. I think it's safe to have these conversations now. I've been reluctant until today. Look what a night show does. Look what a live show does to me.
You're getting wrapped up in it all.
It gets me to take the chance of talking about the Sabres making the playoffs for the first time since
they're pretty much in at this point. Yeah. It's a matter of when, not if. I mean, I was on the pregame show in Toronto last weekend, and I kept referring to everything of, if the Sabres make the playoffs, X, Y, and Z, if this, and they're like, you keep saying if. You really think this is a question? And I was like, look, seen some things down here, all right? Like, and
yeah.
But then they win a couple more, and you're looking at it thinking, like, you start looking at what would have to happen for them to miss the playoffs, and you think, okay, that's pretty extreme.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a good team, right? The idea that they're going to go like 3-11 in these final 14 games is probably not likely. So, but hey, until it's clinched, I'm sure everybody listening, everybody in that building, until it's clinched, is going to be feeling just a little bit. You got to
be clenched until it's clinched.
That's exactly it. And so, yeah, but you do start thinking about it if you're Lindy Ruff, because you have to start managing, some workloads if you can, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to worry about clinching the playoffs first, but you got to start, and you have to start thinking about this goalie conversation. That's one that they should already be having, is who's in net game one. I think it will be, like, if the playoffs started tomorrow, you're starting Alex Lyon.
Yeah.
But you see the way Luukkonen played on Tuesday, and you think you can't keep that guy out of the net, right? So maybe it's still up for discussion. I just think the veteran experience of Lyon, and combined with the way he's played and the style of game that you're going to play in the playoffs, I go back to the Ullmark Swayman thing from a few years ago,
mm-hmm.
which is a similar situation to the one the Sabres are in now. And I remember watching those playoffs thinking, A, they had gone away from something that worked for them, right? The back and forth of it had really worked.
Mm-hmm.
But B, it became clear, and I think that the Bruins maybe got to it kind of late, but it became clear that Ullmark's style of play was not as effective in the playoffs as Swayman's was, with the scramble plays in front, like the battle that is necessary to succeed in
it'd be so stiff,
a messy style of game. And I just felt like Ullmark, when they got to that style of hockey, like, his game wasn't as sharp. So I have some of the similar reservations with Luukkonen versus Lyon. Like, it feels like Lyon has more of that in his game and would probably make a better goalie for that style of hockey. But he's also been to the playoffs before, so he's got that. He's older, like, stuff like that will matter, I think. And he's been important in the room, right? Like, he's been one of their leaders in a way. So, having him out there in the net, I think either way, they're both dressing. I think you have to do away with the
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Ellis
No, you're not going to have Colton
as your
Ellis.
backup. You send him up to the press box because you're going to have to maybe have a quick hook at time. There's so much that goes on in the playoffs that you just have to be quicker with some of those things.
Let's kind of table the other part of the goaltending discussion because we're going to have a couple months to talk about that. But that's going to be a fascinating part of the offseason discussion is how do the Sabres handle the position? Lyon under contract, Luukkonen under contract, rumors that they were thinking about moving Devin Levi, Colton Ellis under contract, right? You have all these moving pieces. Trading Devin Levi doesn't move the needle in terms of the cap.
No,
Luukkonen
it doesn't do
does, but why
anything
would you
for you.
trade him, right? Let's not get into that. But I gotta sort out what the game plan is. You're gonna have to kind of, draw a line. You're gonna have to plant a flag, I think, on that one this summer. You and I both. And I think it's gonna be fascinating to see how Yarmo navigates that. We have time to let that marinate, but I think we're coming for that discussion at some point. I want to shift to Elliot Friedman. Did you read 32 Thoughts?
I read the Sabres portions.
Did you read that? So, river hockey. People question. So there was a great quote. One opposing player said it's river hockey, although they're very good at it, but they're kind of wondering if that style can work during grind time. It's a good question, actually. It's a good question. The second part of that little nugget that was in 32 Thoughts, I think is the more interesting one for me. Another challenge. Can you make life hard for Rasmus Dahlin, who clearly enjoys making life hard on others? It will be strategy to punish the Dahlin-Matthias Samuelsson pair. First thing I thought of when I read that is you're going to play Tampa again soon. And makes you wonder, does Tampa just come out the same way? Do they really start targeting? I thought that was a really great call out, great point. We haven't seen it yet with the Sabres team. Outside of the Tampa game, maybe the two games, the most recent games, have teams really gone after, really tried to punish the Sabres top four, we'll call it? Who's taking a run at Owen Power? Who's taking a run at Bo Byram? Again, outside of the Tampa game. Something to look for, especially now that it's out there in print in one of the most read columns in the industry. Right? I guess something to think about. Did you have any thoughts when you read it? What were you thinking about that?
Yeah, as with anything with Elliot Friedman, you're thinking some of these are his thoughts. Most of them aren't, right?
Yeah.
Most of them are the thoughts of people in the sport. And so whichever player is telling him about river hockey is probably telling him the same thing about that top pair. And it is an interesting call out for a few reasons because people have gone after Dahlin, right? But a lot of times it's Dahlin sort of inviting it with the way that
It's
he
how do
plays.
you go after him too?
And it's how you go after him. He's hard to hit, unless you're punching the back of his head after the whistle, like Brandon Hagel.
Yeah.
Because he's so shifty and he's so quick that it's hard to get a good lick on him. The Samuelsson piece is kind of interesting because Samuelsson has been great all year, obviously, but not necessary. And he's physical. He's got a ton of hits this year and kills plays, shuts things down. He's not that guy after the whistle, right? He's not that guy that is, I don't think he's ever fought since I've been on the beat.
No.
And so, not that you need to fight to answer to what Elliot's talking about, but it's a matter of what other teams are going to try to do to get inside their heads, right? And to your point, nobody's done it to Owen Power. Nobody's really done it to Bowen Byram all that often. And so all four of those guys I would put in the category of, players that aren't the first guys you're expecting to be fighting back or taking that fight to somebody else, right? And so they did it against Tampa. Bowen Byram was in the mix on everything against Tampa. He was ready to roll. Dahlin and Samuelsson were in those scrums. Dahlin dropped the gloves, but it's not their game. And while they are all big-ish, they're not like that, heavy, heavy style of defenseman, probably with the exception of Samuelson. So
It's
that will,
interesting though, right?
I
Like
think you
because
go after those four because that is the Sabres. Like that
well,
is so much of what they do. Like the reason they are good is because of those four guys.
you think tactically. Look at how Florida. What did Florida do really well when winning cups? Dumping it in, going and hit, right? I think you're going to start to see that strategy deployed a lot more. Dumping pucks in, making those guys pivot, go retrieve them, and they're going to hit the shit out of them when they go back. I think that's the strategy to punish Dahlin, Matthias Samuelson pair. That's a critical element of it, I think, for opposing teams. Is that part? I think there is all the other, post whistle scrum stuff, and maybe dragging them in and doing that. But I think it's that. Like again, how do you punish them? How do you go after them? How do you go after down? Wearing them down.
Wear them
Haven't seen a
down.
lot of that.
Because that's what I mean. They're not like these heavy, heavy guys. And they're all pretty young still. Right. So their taste of that, with the exception of Byram, who made it, went deep, won a cup, with the Avalanche. The other three haven't been through this and the physical and mental grind that the playoffs are, and that so many teams are going to want to play that way regardless of who they're playing, right? Like that's how the game tends to be played in the playoffs. Like there's not as much
We haven't
space.
seen it a lot in this stretch. I don't see a lot of teams dumping it in against the Sabres.
Not a
Do you?
ton. Like not so much that it's noticeable. You have the teams that play that way that are doing it, right? Florida, Tampa maybe did a
Right
bit of
on
it.
cue. Here's Cummings. I don't think that wearing down the opponent's defense in the playoffs is exactly from the book of Revelations. Yeah, it's kind of like the reminder, Cummings, I guess is what I'm saying. It's the Sabreverse that might need a refresher on how playoff hockey looks and works. I agree. We've seen the Sabres do really well for 3 months and 10 days. And I haven't seen a lot of teams deploy that tactic, is I think what I'm saying. Of really trying to wear them down. And the top four is the heartbeat of the team. When we talked about what's their identity, you mentioned in your face style, but really the identity was the top four D that were playing 22 and a half minutes or whatever it was every game.
Still is. That's still, they have skill in other parts of the lineup. They have really good players in other parts of their lineup. But the thing that has gotten them from good to great is those guys being really, really good. I mean, Dahlin being one of the best defensemen in the world, Samuelson having this, breakout season, I would call it, and Byram, power leveling up, and Byram really taking a big step from where he was last year in terms of his consistency. Like, not a lot of teams have the luxury of four guys that can play that way. And so it's going to be the easy thing to do, I think, for opposing coaches. The easy thing to circle is to put them to the test. And not every team is equipped to play that style of game. It's part of why we bring up Columbus, right? Is they very much are. And so, like are the Red Wings going to wear the Sabres down in a 7-game series? The Canadians? I don't think so. Like they could try.
Columbus.
They could try, but Columbus might, Tampa might, those teams, Carolina
can.
One of the best forechecking teams in the NHL.
Yeah.
But Detroit, Montreal, Boston might try. I don't know if they have the horses to pull it off. But
something I'm looking at down the stretch, I guess, is to see, especially these teams that are in the playoffs, to start tuning up their games a little bit, how they handle the Sabres down the stretch. Or, it's not like they're going to treat it like a preseason game, not show anything. You know what I mean? Like in football.
I'm not saying Dahlin doesn't play a physical game. I'm throwing Pablo up here saying, imagine thinking.
What does he say?
Imagine thinking Dahlin doesn't play a physical game. He might not be talking to me. He might be talking to somebody in the chat, but I don't think he doesn't. Like, he plays physical. He plays nasty. He's probably I think he might be the toughest guy on the Sabres roster, like with the way that he plays. He's just not incredibly heavy right? Like in terms of taking the punishment. Like he's a tall but somewhat lanky still. Wiry would be the better word.
Is he the dirtiest Saber?
I think easily. Like I don't think it's even close. I'm trying to think of somebody else that's Benson, I guess, would,
Maybe.
but he's
Yeah.
not pulling some of the stuff Darlene pulls. So he's physical,
Yeah.
but I'm just thinking like of a, big, heavy style of defenseman is like, that's not how I would describe him. And so in terms of, that's why I say teams that are going after him on the forecheck, you got to be careful because he can really make you pay. That's part of the cat and mouse game with this, I think, as well. If you go too much in that direction, you definitely are opening yourself up for what these defensemen do really well, which is transition the puck. So if you better land if you're going all out on that forecheck.
Looking at the chat, I don't think Pablo was writing that in response to anything you said. There's a chat above him that basically was suggesting that Darling needs to grow a pair because he won't pass a physical in the tournament. It's a man's game. Sack up is what local evening news says. So I think that was a response to that, but who knows? Maybe you said something that pissed Pablo off. Pablo has every right to call you out.
He should.
If he
raise the temperature.
If he did take exception.
We have to get the chat and the show playoff ready. So, raise the temperature by all means.
That's right. 41 minutes in, hit the like button, people. We're going to go for a few more minutes here. Matthew, if you have anything start, if you want to get them queued up, I'll talk briefly just about some of the prospect happenings real quick, because we saw Gavin McCarthy sign a 3-year entry-level contract. Really good season at BU. Really, really good 3-year career at BU. Right-handed defenseman, notoriously Kevin Adams' neighbor from Clarence Center, but a well-earned contract for Gavin McCarthy. He did sign an ATO, so he's going to report to Rochester for the balance of this year. Play out on the tryout contract. Entry level starts next season. 3rd team All Hockey East. Runner-up as Hockey East Defensive Defenseman of the Year was Gavin McCarthy. Amongst the leaders in blocked shots for defensemen in Hockey East past couple of seasons, played all year this year on the Terriers' top pair with Cole Hudson, who just made his NHL debut with Washington. So I think that was a no-brainer. He was expected to come in and turn pro after his 3rd collegiate season. 25 minutes average time on ice, over 25 for Gavin McCarthy this year. So a couple other guys around the clock as far as potential collegiates that could leave school and turn pro. Maxim Sturbach, I think the Sabres should be really interested in getting him in once his season with Michigan State is done. Jake Richard took a step back statistically this year, but has the skill set. I think, Richard as a forward, big shooter, big body, not the fastest guy, can certainly be a good AHL player. I think, what he can do to separate himself from some players. I mean, look, there's so many guys that are his size and have a net front game and can rip the puck from range like Jake Richard. So it's going to come down to details off the puck for a guy like that. And he still has time to work on it once he gets into the pro ranks. So be looking to see if he leaves, because he just is wrapping up his 3rd year. And then Brody Zemer. The question there with Brody Zemer is going to be very interesting. Finished his sophomore season. So we mentioned a couple shows ago that we didn't expect Minnesota to win the Big Ten tournament, which is basically what they would have needed to do to continue their season. They're out. They're done. The Gophers fired Bob Motzko after 8 years as the coach of the Gophers. And it's 50-50 at best. So the guy like Zemer is going to want to leave school and turn down the opportunity to be the captain of his team and get the NIL money that he's collecting. It could hinge on who the new coach is, but I think that it's his home state program, the flagship program in his home state. It's going to be interesting to see what Zemer does. So I wanted to mention those guys. I think Sturbach, Richard, and maybe to a certain extent Brody Zemer are going to be on the clock here next after Gavin McCarthy signed. And then just some other accolades real quick, and then I'll get off the prospect wagon here. So I mentioned Zemer. He was 2nd team All Big Ten. Adam Kleber, big 6'6" defenseman, right shot for Minnesota Duluth was named NCHC Defensive Defenseman of the Year. All these collegiate conferences do it right. They have an offensive defenseman of the year and a defensive defenseman of the year. Kleber got defensive defenseman of the year in the NCHC. Freshman left-handed defenseman Luke Osborne from the University of Wisconsin. Big Ten all-freshman team and all Big Ten honorable mention. And then we have to talk about Stevie Wonder. Steven Sardarian. So let's just go back real quick. We've talked about him for a while. Gifted playmaker. Super skilled. When he doesn't have the puck, who knows? Hot and cold. When he decides he wants to go, he goes. When he decides he just wants to loop around, do a Sunday skate, he'll take a Sunday skate.
I still remember watching him UNH Northeastern when I went to go visit Devin Levi. He speared a guy.
He's a prick. Yeah, he's all over the place. Listen, he's all over the place.
Hey, good for this guy. Didn't know he had it in him. But
CCHA Forward of the Year. CCHA all whatever they call it. He was on their first team all CCHA. Very dominant point producer. Tons of assists. Great playmaker, like I said. His puck skills are incredible. Somebody will take a chance on him. I'm not so sure it's going to be the Buffalo Sabres with Jarmo Kekalainen. Seems like there was a breakdown with Sardarian. Let's just go through real quick the last 12 months, right? Hell of a season last year. I think Stevie Wonder wanted to leave school. Declared himself no longer a bona fide college student. Didn't get a contract offer. Didn't come to development camp. I was told that he was coming to development camp. Didn't come to development camp. Then he magically goes back to school. When you look at their game sheets, no Sabres logo. Doesn't always mean anything, but also a sign. He's likely going to be a free agent. I think somebody will take a chance on the talent. Even if it's an AHL deal. He's going to get a look somewhere. But regardless, had a great season. And he'll be done, and we'll see what happens with him. But rounding out the accolades for Sabres prospects, pretty good year for Buffalo Sabres NCAA prospects. And like I said, a few on the clock. We'll see. And Poltapov wrapped up his regular season also. Couldn't go without mentioning Prokhor Poltapov. Seska's leading point getter. So I'll throw in one
more year on that contract.
One more year in his contract. Best thing about Poltapov this year, forget the points, forget that he led his team in points, played for a very demanding coach, very demanding system, defensive details. A lot of assists this year from Poltapov by just creating chaos. Wraparounds, getting four guys turning their backs around the net because he's looping around because he's really good beneath the goal line. It's not always a pretty setup, but good shorthanded minutes this year, good power play minutes. They kind of, started playing better at the end of the year. But the biggest thing that's going to stick with me is that the coach that he played for this year was a new coach, very rigid, and he responds to that. That's the takeaway. So I'll stop there. I just filibustered for a good 7 minutes. Did you get anything queued up that you want to review from the chat?
I started a few.
I haven't talked prospects in a while. That felt good.
I feel like we haven't done a prospect update on here in a while because the team has been, the big club has been the main focus of attention. I'm very curious to see what Brody Zemer does. When I think about Jarmo types, I think Zemer is going to be very
prototype,
much his type. I think Poltapov is very much his type. Who knows with Steven Sardarian? He did draft Patrick Laine, right? Or trade for Patrick Laine, maybe it was. Traded for him, right? He didn't draft him.
No, he was drafted by Winnipeg.
He took that chance. Now, a little bit of a difference when a guy has proven it at the NHL level and has filled the net the way Patrick Laine did. Patrick Laine, by the way, was kind of out there at the deadline a little bit. So, something to wonder about given the
not needed in Buffalo.
Given the history.
I understand the power play is inconsistent in Buffalo, but Patrick Laine is not needed in Buffalo.
So there's a lot of angst about Columbus in the chat, which is fits in with what we were saying. Cantor, who also said, he wants the X next to the Sabres name before playoffs are discussed, but
I
it's
get
too
it,
late.
man. I
It's
get
too
it.
late.
I get it.
Cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
He thinks Columbus is going to second in the division, which I think is actually still in play.
It's
If they
doable.
keep
Yeah.
playing this way, and that wouldn't be a bad thing for Buffalo at all. I think Pittsburgh and the Islanders are preferable matchups. Jeremy asks about Greenway and his status. Do we expect him in the lineup at any point?
IR right now.
He's on IR. We haven't really seen him too much he hasn't been on the ice with the team. And given the ramp up period he needed last time when he was skating with the team, I don't really expect him in the lineup. And a part of the reason I don't know about the playoffs is I don't like I think they'd be fine salary cap wise if they played him, but something to consider with your playoff lineups is
Yeah.
the
Each
fact
game
that
lineup has to be cap compliant.
he makes $4 million. I think they would be okay. But I don't know, a guy that hasn't been out there for this extended stretch of time, you're getting pretty close to the point where you say, same thing goes for Danforth, by the way. But
Yeah.
they could get to a point, though, in the playoffs where somebody else gets more seriously injured, right? And then you have to think about bringing one of these guys in. But so far, with Greenway is kind of status quo. Cummings brings up a good point about Columbus. I had to throw this one in. The Connor Garland deal at the deadline got a bit overlooked across the league. I thought so as well, in a weird way. Like everybody talking about it being kind of a sleepy deadline, but the Connor Garland trade to me was a pretty big trade, and that's a
6-year
player.
extension hasn't even kicked in yet. That was a
Right.
big deal. Yeah.
That was a massive deal, and I really liked it for Columbus. And any listeners of the show know that I've liked Connor Garland as a player for a while. Thought he'd be an interesting fit for the Sabres.
Yeah, you're a mass hole homer.
He is a Massachusetts guy that plays into it a little bit, but definitely the style of game, fits in with what Columbus is trying to do
Yeah.
there. They've made a couple of additions that have made that team harder to play against, and Garland has been a pretty easy fit. And
I don't like that matchup. Yeah.
no, it's not a fun one for the Sabres. It would be a pain. It would be really tough.
What else you got?
An or 2 or 3 or 4 had some kind words for the locker room survey that went up this morning at The Athletic. And
let's read the whole chat. Yeah. Matthew, regarding the excellent new piece on room vibes, please manipulate the votes next time so Tage doesn't get any more sartorially over-encouraged. I can't say that word. Over-encouraged than he already is. Yeah. I like to read the whole chat, just so you know, for the audio listeners.
Fair. I always forget about our good friends on the audio side. This was Tage's dress was his wardrobe was the focus of a lot of internal debate in the room. It's a little out there sometimes, to the chatter's point. I think he brought up what he was wearing on Spittin' Chicklets a few weeks ago, maybe like a big jean jacket or something. I don't know. He's definitely out there. He puts a lot of effort into it, which some guys on the team appreciate, but some guys threw him in as the worst dressed.
Yeah, they're not buying it.
Yeah, they were like, I think Tuck said he thinks he's the best dressed, but he's actually the worst. Good times all around doing that. It's been a while since, actually my entire time on the beat, that the temperature of the air and the fan base was not right for that style of story. Just kind of a, off topic, off ice kind of fun. fun look at the dynamic of the room. We've got part 2 of that coming on Saturday morning, I believe it is. But it was fun. It was good to bounce around the room and get those guys going, get those guys talking trash about each other, and a few of them were like, "This is my favorite interview of the year." I legitimately think that Rasmus Dahlin has not, and I don't even think it's close. Actually, I don't think there's another time I can think of where Rasmus Dahlin has enjoyed speaking to me more than he did for that. He had a good time, so um, I was glad they were into it, and glad some people enjoyed it. We had some fun. It was a good way to pass some time over the Olympic break with all those practices, grabbing guys coming off the ice, and Benson was predictably the butt of some jokes, and I think he loves it. I think he's like, he takes it in stride. He's a good sport.
Benson's got to be excited to, get a couple more years into his career where he's not the young guy, and then Benson's going to be the guy that's going to try to, shit on the 19 or 20-year-old kid that's in the locker room. But I don't think he's ever going to escape it, Benson.
I'm
I
not
just
sure
think
he
he's
will.
always going to be the guy. As
You
long as like Thompson and Rasmus are here and, Tuck, if he resigns, I just think that Benson, heaven forbid Zucker gets another contract, right? It's like, I just think that Benson's always going to be the guy. You know better than I, though. You're down there. I'm not.
Yeah, I feel like there's something to that for sure. Like, you come in as this 18, 19-year-old kid, and the eyes of the people that were there, like, it's going to be until like that tier of guys moves on, and that could be a while. So yeah, I don't think he's going to escape it too quickly. A few of the surprises from that, I really enjoyed Noah Ostlund and his sort of sly sense of humor. Which Bo and Byram called out. He's like, which I assumed Bo was just like busting my chops because Bo is, Bo. That's kind of like players saying, I think he was like second in the funniest guy on the team vote, and didn't surprise me at all because he's very much got the sense of humor at all times. But Ostlund taking a nice dig at Krebs was good. Where I was not expecting it. Like a lot of the young guys, there was only really a couple of questions in there that were like, who's least likely to pick up the check on the road. Some guys were like, and then, when I loosened them up a little bit, they got going, and like worse dressed, some guys like are trying to be
There's
nice
got to
or
be a
whatever.
story there on Krebs. There's got to be
I
more.
don't know. He's he picked up a lot of
that
the
was like
votes to the point.
unanimous almost. Yeah, right. Like there's got to
Very
be
close.
something. Yeah.
Well, it became unanimous, especially once I talked to Krebs, and he was like, "I'm probably getting a lot of votes, huh?" And then I would bring it up to guys that were having a hard time. I'm like, just so you know, like Krebs kind of admitted it, and they're like, "Oh, okay," and that got a lot of guys going. They're like,
He must have
"Okay,
like forgot there's got to be a story, right? Like, did he forget his wallet or did he bail? Like something, right? It's like, I don't know.
Yeah, we've got a few. It was fun too. I think it was in the first one. The who's most likely to be an Olympian was kind of a fun little debate. Got some guys talking. So there was some fun stuff. It was good to talk to them about some off topic stuff. Yeah, Krebs. I don't know. I think he's just cheap. It's tough though. Yeah, there's got to be a story or two there. He must have Irish goodbye to dinner, or who
Something.
knows.
Yeah. You got to get to, you're the intrepid journalist on the show. Get to the bottom of that.
But I like that he admitted it. I was only a
Yeah.
few into it, and he's like, "Oh, I'm definitely getting a lot of heat on this one, I'm sure," and that was pretty entertaining.
TJ53 asks if Mertka can play in Rochester after his season is over. The answer is yes, and he will. I'm sure if Rochester's still playing, it's going to be, who knows.
It's been touch and go there.
Yeah, so we'll see on that. But he is eligible. TJ_53. Anything else from you, Matthew? I got to admit, I came in here all pissy pants like I always am whenever we do a night show because I'm just this is when I'm just like chilling, man. And I missed the chat. Who is the Amberix MVP from Jeremy Beecher? Zach Jones.
He is having a great year.
So I missed the chat.
The chat brings a different life, a different energy to the show. These are the originals, right?
Yeah,
We
all
see
the,
a
all
lot
the
of
OGs. There's some OGs in here for sure.
a lot of our back when it was just a handful of people in the chat when we were first firing this thing up, and now it's Clinton says don't stream at 3 a.m. Well, maybe we'll just start going live when we record in the morning, and we'll see who the real diehards are.
STFU, Clinton. Take your. I'm gonna ironically read your name. No, we record the show at about 6 a.m. Sometimes we don't get started till 6:15, 6:30. A lot of times because Matthew's late. And it's true. And we like to have it posted, before 8 a.m. Ideally, it's up by 7:30. It just worked for a better show. I thought it was tighter. I think it's better for both parties, audio listeners, everything else. I'm sharper in the morning. I'm never sharp, but when I am sharper, it's going to be in the morning. I don't know why, even though I still make mistakes in the morning without the coffee, but I don't know. I just think that it's worked better for me personally. It's been nothing against the chat, but I have missed the chat.
The chat is good. I don't know if I'm sharper in the morning. I'm sharper in the morning than I am late at night, but the sharpest time is somewhere during the day, but it's just schedule wise kind of impossible to make it work. So we do what we can, and the mornings help us get the show out more frequently too. If we tried to do it at night, we would probably only have one a week at best.
Yeah. And honestly, the numbers for selfishly, I think are better when we do it the other way. The numbers.
Yeah. There's something about YouTube that I don't think loves the
I just think the numbers are better
or something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But either way,
but we got,
I think when in playoffs, listen, so was it Cantor? If the Sabres make the playoffs, I'll do that for Cantor. There probably will be live shows thrown in there. It's not going to be exclusive. I could kind of see that. I think there's just going to be, we're going to be buzzing to want to talk about the games, I think a little bit more. But we'll see. Let's get them into the playoffs first, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, and the schedule will be chaotic.
Yeah.
I'll be on the road a lot. So there'll be a lot of opportunities. We'll bring the live chat along for the, we got to get a merch store up and rolling before the playoffs.
Get the River Hockey shirt going.
River Hockey. We could have
RIP JBD shirt.
Baker Fairburn Hockey Show shirt with production crew on the back.
That's right. The production. No, that's right. That's right.
That would be a good one.
You're all in the production crew. Anything else, Matthew? We're going to be at 9:30 here soon. We're already over an hour. If you got anything, let her rip now or forever hold your peace. I don't want you to hold your peace. I mean, hold your peace. Picking up what I'm laying down.
On that,
if you hold your peace, I don't want to see it.
I think I'm good. I think I've said all I need to say at this point.
All right. I'll do Matthew's plugs. So Matthew already alluded to it. I think if for a more in-depth conversation, first of all, read Matthew's player survey over at theathletic.com/Sabres. As always, like this show and do all that stuff. Feed Matthew's ego. I believe Matthew will have another conversation about his piece tomorrow on with Duffer and Marty. So check that out. I will be on with Duffer and Marty on Monday. So we're getting a little Baker Fairburn Hockey Show sandwich on the show. At least that could change if life gets in the way. Maybe I won't be there. Just kidding, guys. I'll be there. Don't worry. I'll be there. But on that note, everyone, thanks for hopping in. Again, always a pop-up show when we do these live. And the chat, you guys were great. So we appreciate you showing up. Hope everyone enjoys the game tonight. For Matthew Fairburn, for the production crew who is already out there, I can see they're churning the butter on the shirts. They're getting the shirts ready. I'm Chris Baker. Enjoy the rest of the Sabres West Coast trip, Sabres After Dark. We'll be back again soon to talk about everything that the Sabres are doing here in the next couple of days. Take care, everyone.